Hey, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Rising Tide Leadership Podcast. My name is Mo, and I'll be sitting in the host chair today because I have a very special guest, Reagan Cannon. She is not only an international leadership speaker, executive coach, and much more, but she brings a wealth of experience from her time in senior leadership at Fortune 15 companies like Amazon and AT&T. Reagan has led teams of thousands, worked in multiple countries, and now helps leaders from startups all the way to the boardroom, level up their effectiveness. Reagan, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Mo. I appreciate it. It's exciting to be here.
Why don't you start out by telling my audience a little bit about your leadership journey? How did you evolve into the leader and the executive coach that you are?
Absolutely. Well, it's a great story in the sense of it hits, you think you know what you're doing, and then you learn you don't know what you're doing, and then you learn more about what you should be doing, and you grow. A lot of that theme. And so I started out, my very first management job was actually in college. I was managing a team of 3 people. We were in charge of selling advertisement for the school newspapers. So starting out young as a manager, starting to make my mistakes early and learn early in my leadership role. And when I graduated college, I got an internship at AT&T. At the time, it was called Pacific Bell because I was in California back in the day. And then I really spent 17 years at AT&T, but I had multiple careers. And that's one of the things that I always encourage people to think about is you can try to get experiences, but I really encourage is rotate around to build skills and capabilities. So really think about what are the skills and capabilities. And within AT&T, I got to work in the wireless division, leading large teams. I got to work in the entertainment division, doing marketing for television services. I got to do a lot of different things, and I learned a lot over my 17 years. Ended up moving from California to Texas and had an opportunity to work at headquarters. And that was a great experience as well. And after about 17 years, I got a phone call to come join Amazon as an executive in their customer service department. And so that was really exciting. Moved back to the West Coast to Seattle, had an opportunity to work for a very innovative company, very dynamic company, very demanding company in Amazon, learned a lot, led teams of up to 1,000 people while I was there. Very technical teams as well as very operationally focused. So really had to learn, how do I take my leadership and expand it all over the globe? I was supporting 200 countries, 28 languages, really had to learn how to expand my influence without getting overwhelmed. And at one point, I got the opportunity to lead all executive development for Amazon globally and got to work with the senior leaders across the entire globe, which was a wonderful experience. And then eventually found my way into entrepreneurship. And 3 years ago, actually this month, 3 years ago, I left corporate full time to work out on my own. It had always been a dream of mine and a calling to go out and be a speaker. I was very excited to do it, but I needed the seasoning, Mo. We all do, right? We need the stories, we need the examples, the mistakes. And really, I got the opportunity to learn over my career so that when I stepped out as an entrepreneur, I could bring all of that impact to my clients, the audiences I speak to, the workshops I do, and of course, the coaching clients that I have.
That's quite the story. What are some of the pivotal leadership lessons that you learned working for companies like Amazon, AT&T, and people in all sectors around the world?
One of the things when I really leaned into my global leadership, I had to learn how to utilize curiosity. It's easy when you go in somewhere. Our brain loves to create shortcuts and assumptions and snap judgments. And it's easy for us, especially as a global leader, it's easy for me to travel the globe and kind of make judgments or make assumptions around certain cultures or customs or behaviors. And what someone told me early on was, Reagan, you need to lean into curiosity. Ask great questions and then do this crazy thing called listening. Ask great questions and then actually listen to answers. And what that did is it really enriched my life. Where this really came to light was the first time I went to China. And I knew China was really different than the United States. I had that awareness. And I said, I want to make sure that when I go visit my team in China, I'm really culturally sensitive and in tune and aligned, and I'm really connecting with the individuals there. And so I called someone who had worked with the team in China really closely. And I said, hey, tell me some of the things I should be aware of that might be differences and I should be aware of. 30 minutes later, I had a whole list of things that I needed to do differently or be aware of or lean into. And I had the most culturally rich experience. I remember one of the things they said about being a global leader: be curious, be open-minded, be flexible. Because when you're on the ground globally, you need to make sure that you're sort of tuning in to the local instruction. Let them lead in a way, which, as an executive is kind of like you want to be, you feel like, oh, they're expecting me to lead. And I'm like, I'm going to let them lead. And so I went into the office in China and I spent a day in the office. And they said, now tomorrow, this was in Chengdu. And they said, now tomorrow you're going to go see the panda bears. And I was like, what? And they're like, the largest panda bear reserve is here in Chengdu. We're very proud of it. We want to take you. And so there were 4 women in the office, and the 4 women in the office put me in the car and drove me to go see the pandas. And I thought, this is like a waste of time. Like I should be in the floor. I should, right? My sense, right, Mo? I'm like, I gotta be on the floor. I gotta be doing the work. I gotta be looking at the
Absolutely.
reports, talking to the people and all this kind of stuff. And they're like, no, 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 we want you to go to this. So I spent, basically the day walking around. And what was fascinating was I learned more in those 4-ish hours at the Panda Bear Reserve than I probably could have learned just in a meeting room or whatever. I got to ask questions. They asked me questions. I learned perspective, points of views, challenges, issues, concerns, what was going on. I got the pulse of the whole office by just allowing curiosity and open-mindedness to kind of take over as a leader. And so that's really been one of my superpowers, my biggest lessons learned.
Well, it's almost like being on the tennis court or the golf course. That's where most deals are closed these days, right? So you can add the zoo to that. You talk a lot about leading with clarity and confidence. Why
Mhm.
are those two traits so essential for today's leaders?
Yeah, I confidence is really important because especially in leadership, people are looking to you to really give them that clear direction and to lead with a level of confidence. And here's the thing, I don't think confidence, you don't just, come out of the womb with confidence. What I say is courage comes before confidence. If you wait to be confident before you move on something, you're going to be waiting a long time. And I think having the self awareness that we have natural fears, natural concerns, our brain neurologically is looking for threats and it has fears and concerns and drawbacks and hesitations. I think we just need to admit that. We also have to say, if I'm going to wait till I'm confident, it's not going to happen. So take action. My friend's a firefighter and he said, Reagan, courage is moving forward in the face of your fears. And it's true. He would know, right? As a firefighter, you're running towards the
Right.
event that everyone is running away from. And it takes that courage. And that really, I think, Mo, what I found is it's really about being courageous and leaning in to that courage. And then what's interesting is the more you practice that, the confidence comes. The confidence comes. And so really moving first when you're afraid and then allowing the confidence to come. And then I think as a leader, it's really important. I really encourage intentionality and intentionality of what am I asking this person to do? What is our vision and mission? What is the clear culture and values I want us to align with? Because that creates clarity for the team. And so that level of intentionality comes before clarity. And so really being intentional around this, giving ourselves time to be strategic thinkers, planners, thinking through all that, that level of intentionality creates clarity. So it's really about taking action when you're afraid, being courage creates confidence. And that level of intentionality creates clarity for our teams. And when they have clarity, all the neuroscience says when you've got that level of clarity, you move faster, you move with trust, and you get better outcomes.
Wow, leaders, you heard it there. You gotta give them the good stuff, be clear about it, make sure your team knows, even in times of uncertainty, right?
Absolutely, even more so.
Reagan, you mentioned to me right as we were about to get on that you have something new that you're
Yes,
rolling out. Why don't you take us through that platform?
absolutely. Thanks for asking about that, Mo. It's really about scaling your leadership. What I found is, particularly as I got into these big roles, I was leading teams of 5,000 people, 10,000 people, big companies, many locations. What I found is if I tried to lead the same way I had always led before, it led to burnout, confusion, and frustration. And what you'll notice is I know you've got listeners across all different spectrums of leadership. As you move up in the organization, with each level or each expansion or each new project, or as the projects grow, or if you're leading a startup, as the startup expands, as your leadership grows, you have to think about, how do I get more impact? Because now I've got a bigger group to impact, a bigger budget, a bigger project. How do I get additional impact without additional time? Because at some point the time runs out. You can't just be like, you know what, Reagan, I just got to work harder and longer and work the weekends and work more time. Like, time
Yeah,
is a finite resource, right?
it
And
is.
so you can't infinitely scale. You can't just say more time equals more impact. You've got to get more impact, but hold your time flat. At some point, it's got to level off, or you won't be able to be sustainably productive and a great leader. So what I realized is there's 6 transitions that you need to make, especially as you start getting into these broader, more senior roles. And these are the transitions you've got to make in your leadership. And you can start working on these transitions and building these muscles early on in your career. But what I found is there's really 6 different transitions. And so what you've got to do is you've got to say, and they spell out scaled. They spell out scaled. And so what you need to do is the first thing you have to do is moving from the S is for strategic focus. You got to stop trying to run the operation. You got to start leading the organization. You've got to be, instead of down and in running everything, you got to be looking up and out into the future and setting the focus and strategy for the team. The C is all about communication. It's all about communication. And the thing we have to communicate the most is how to lead through change. Because oftentimes in a leadership position, right, Mo, we're trying to improve things, make things better, introduce new change, introduce new concepts, or, have us do the new report that is going to make us more effective, right? And so what we have to do is we've got to lead through change in a way where we don't just run to the change, turn around, and no one's with us. We've got to bring people along with us in change without them burning out. Because change fatigue is real, and we've got to communicate in a way that brings people along with us. The A is for architect culture. Now, culture kind of is one of those things. A lot of times people are like, what is culture? And basically, culture is the behaviors that are permitted and promoted in your department or your organization. And culture is always being formed. The question is, are you the one forming it? Right? Or is it naturally happening? Are your values being reflected in the room when you're not there? So you got to be intentional about defining it. If strategy is the what, culture is the how you want people to behave. And then L is for lift and develop leaders. L is all about leaders. And what you want to do is move from doer to developer. You aren't the one that should be doing it all the time. You need to be developing. And I like to talk about active succession, because a lot of people think, well, I'm going to build a succession so when I leave, someone can take my job. But I got news for you. As the company grows or the organization changes, your current job becomes what someone else should be doing so that you can do something new, something bigger. So you actually need to have succession in place, not just succession for when you leave. And then E is for empower through delegation. So many leaders tell me, oh, Reagan, I'm not really good at delegation. I've tried it. I end up doing the work myself. It's just faster if I do it myself. It's just easier if I do it myself. And they fall into the trap mode of trying to do it all themselves. Now, the truth is, you're pretty successful. You were probably promoted or you were given
Right.
additional responsibilities because you're probably pretty darn good at your job. But eventually, you become a bottleneck if you try to do it all yourself. And so, how can you have an active teaching mindset and empowering the next set of leaders or your team or your peers or a vendor to help you, like really giving those delegation skills? And the D is for deepening strategic relationships. You've got to deepen relationships. You've got to be growing relationships from just knowing people to really moving to trust. And you've got to be able to say, if you're really working on big things, you probably can't work on them by yourself. You've got to have multiple departments working together or multiple leaders collaborating for a larger outcome. The bigger the project and opportunity, the more you need to work with others. And so you've got to be constantly doing that. So what I found is these 6 transitions are really what's essential. And so I've built keynotes, I've built full day workshops, cohort programs, and coaching programs around these transitions because leaders really do struggle to make these transitions. And when you're not failing as a senior leader, everybody knows it. Everybody knows it, right? You're high exposure when you're the one in charge and you're not leading in a way you should.
Yeah, I was always told you can fool your peers, but you cannot fool the people that you are supervising because they know when it comes down to it, your people are really the only thing that matters. Everything else is secondary. On the subject of keynotes, workshops, coaching, how do
Hmm.
you tailor your approach depending on the audience, the leadership level, all the
Yeah, well, I lean back into that curiosity that I had before, and really, me and my team, we love to do discovery before we work with a client because at the end of the day, I am not like clients are not interested in products. They're interested in solving problems. And that is where I think a lot of times as entrepreneurs, or if you work in sales, or if you work in product development, anything that really what you're doing is going to be seen by the client. You can be enamored with your product. Oh, I built this cool thing. It's this cool framework. It's this cool whatever. It's this whiz bang new product. It's this cool thing. Let me tell you all about it. And at the end of the day, do they care about a product or do they care about their problems? And really, so it's really tailoring and listening to my clients, my current and potential clients, and saying, what problem are they really, what is it that they're really saying? And, for me, I have clients a lot of times that say, I'm frustrated, I'm overwhelmed. This work is piling up. I feel like a bottleneck. I got promoted and nobody's telling me what I should do. And I'm the senior person. I'm nervous. I can't ask, so it's really about listening in to what are your clients saying and what problems are they really struggling with. And that if your solution meets their problem, that is a recipe for success. And so that's what I'm always trying to do to make sure whether it's I'm going to an audience, I'm speaking a keynote audience and I ask the event planner, what are the challenges that they're facing? Or whether I'm coming into work at a workshop, sometimes with an executive team, what are those real challenges? What are they saying? What does it sound like? What are their challenges? And then of course, with my coaching clients, not only meeting with what they say, but then also doing a lot of times assessments or 360s to uncover what are the real problems, the challenges, the bottlenecks they're having in their growth and helping them uncover that.
That's a great way to look at it. What are some of the outcomes or transformations that you've seen in leaders through your coaching and the programs that you offer?
Yeah, first of all, I have seen a few transformations. In fact, I had one managing partner tell me, you've transformed my leadership style and my life. I mean, the way they interact because but what I find is whether it's I'm designing a program or doing a coaching, it's getting underneath these limiting beliefs. We all have them. We all have these limiting beliefs, these things we've just created, our assumptions or truths, or this is how it is, or how I am, or how it's going to be. And when we have those limiting beliefs, so whether it's on stage and helping them, oh my gosh, have this a moment of awareness, or whether it's working with them in a one-on-one setting, it's what are the limiting beliefs that we can uncover, identify them, and then how do we replace them? And so my very practical. I am all about I don't like things that just sit on shelves. I want you to be able to use it. I want you to just put it into practice, try, fail, learn, experiment with it, like really, really put it into practice. So everything I do has these frameworks. It's got best practices. I integrate a lot of research to try and help people really move, because my why is to use my words in a meaningful way to help people change their lives. And so I want people to be able to say, okay, I'm listening to this, or I'm reading this book you have, or I'm reading this blog you have, or whatever it is, and say, I'm going to take that and apply it. And the outcomes that I'm seeing are people are delegating more effectively and empowering their team, which is freeing them up to breathe. I'm seeing people identify some of these limiting beliefs, replacing them with better, stronger beliefs, and gaining confidence and gaining assurance, and leading in a more empathetic and relationally intelligent way. These are the things where I want win-wins. I want your team to benefit from the changes you're making, and I want you to benefit from the changes that are making. I want you to feel more free, more confident, stronger, engaged, relief. I want all those things for you. And I want your team to feel empowered. I want them to feel charged up, ready to go, not burned out, clear on what's next and what you need from them. And that way, both sides are operating more effectively.
I'd like to ask about leadership for the long game. In an age of constant change, what are the biggest leadership blind spots that you see in today's organizations that they really need to focus on?
Yeah, I would say one of the biggest blind spots is you can have a great plan, but if nobody knows about it and no one knows what to do and no one knows how to do it, it's just an idea. It's not a plan. And so communication is essential. And leaders think if I communicate something once, they'll get it. Right. And let me tell you, they put in the gusto, the why and the this and the that, and how it works and why it works, and this and that and the other. And what they underestimate is that the neuroscience behind change is that oftentimes our brain is looking for things, it's evaluating every piece of stimuli that comes into our brain. And it's saying, are you a threat or are you a reward? Do I want to move towards you or away from you? Are you something I like or something I want to avoid? Right? This is what it's doing constantly. And so when people receive change, even if it's good change, their first reaction is going to be uncertainty. What does this mean to me? I thought we were friends. How could you change this? Like, they're going to go through, what does this mean to my job, my role, my area? What does this mean? They're constantly thinking about that. And so what leaders forget oftentimes is that the initial response oftentimes to change is a threat state, which means they're sitting in an emotional posture of threat. And so we're given spouting off this reason, that reason, this reason, that reason, and logic and numbers and data and facts and whatever. And we also have to we also have to remember empathy. Like they are
Right.
like their world is this, and you just told them it's getting eliminated or changed or upheavaled or a brand new, like we're changing the way we do compensation. Don't worry, it's good compensation. Are you kidding? That's my compensation. Like, what do you mean? So we're changing the benefits package. I promise you it's better. They're like, there's me, right? And so
Right.
we have to have some patience, some repetition, some empathy. And we have to remember to communicate what is changing and what isn't changing. Provide as much certainty as we can through that change. And so that's really important as you think about, I love that the long haul, you've got a strategic vision. You should be looking out into the future. How do we get people moving towards that? It'll be a series of changes, but at each stop, remember to have that check-in and be like, okay, my people might be in a threat state. How do I use empathy? Of course, give all the reasons and logic. That's good, but have that empathy, follow up, explain what is and isn't changing. Really, some of these things to make sure. That's where I see a lot of leaders go sideways. They have a great plan. They just don't bring everybody with them.
I've seen a lot of those leaders, and I've been that leader before. What advice would you give to emerging leaders
Mm,
getting into their first leadership position, or they're moving up in their responsibility into a higher leadership position? People that want to build their voice, people that want to lead with authenticity.
yes. Yeah, I would say, some of the best advice that I could give you, a couple of things came to mind. One is be dogged about acquiring skills. I was just talking to someone, a young leader, and they're, early in their career, 25, 26, and they're trying to say, I'm trying to decide what I want to do with my life. And I said, okay, let's at least decide what are the types of things, instead of landing on a job and putting all this pressure on it. It's got to be this job or that job or this. Say, okay, what are the kinds of things I enjoy? And then go explore them and get as many skills and capabilities as you can possibly acquire, especially in your 20s. Like, I always say, be selfish as you can to rotate around as much as you can. Like at a big company, I rotated jobs and I got to try a bunch of different things and acquire all kinds of skills. I learned financial skills. I learned leadership skills. I learned communication skills. I learned all kinds of things by putting myself under different leaders at different organizations, doing different roles, different opportunities. And rather than having an aim of just, I'm going to land on this specific job, I had an aim of gathering as many skills and capabilities as I possibly can. And so that also means really learning from as many different leaders as you can, asking questions and then listening. I can't tell you how annoying it was. I would have some people say, "Hey, Reagan, will you be my mentor?" And then I'd be like, "Okay." And I'd meet with them once or twice and they never really followed through on what we talked about. And they never really tried it or experimented or implemented. And they never followed up with me to tell me, "I tried what you told me to." When I had someone do that with me, Mo, I had an amazing leader in my organization said, "Can you be my mentor?" I said, "Sure." She set up regular meetings. She took tons of notes and she followed up in between the sessions with an email saying, "I tried what you told me to do the other day, Reagan. It worked. It didn't work. It was a mess. It was awesome. It was terrible. Whatever it was, followed up and let me know she'd at least tried it." And I can't tell you how impactful that was to have a mentee that did that. And so I would just tell you, if you want to lead with authenticity, find leaders who are authentic and learn from them. Try what they tell you, put it into practice. If you want to try different roles and different areas and different industries, especially when you're younger, everybody's looking for bright young talent. And so you can apply to different roles, rotate into different jobs at a company, and really try your hand at as many different things as possible. Because once you pick a lane and once you start getting promoted, it does get harder to move around. It does get harder to jump departments. It does get harder to switch industries. It's not impossible. I never say it, because if you look at my background, you'll see I had all kinds of switches and moves, but I will tell you, it does get harder. And so while you're young, lean in and learn as much as you can.
Well, I'm fired up. I'm ready. I'm ready to go. I'm ready to start my career right now. Let's do this. So, Reagan, I know we're coming up on a hard stop here, but before we go, where can my audience find you?
Wonderful. Well, I'd love to connect with them. The best place is reagancannon.com. My website is the best place to go. When you get there, you'll find my TED Talk. You'll find my blog that you can subscribe to. I'm constantly putting out new content on leadership. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm constantly publishing areas on LinkedIn and on Instagram under Reagan Cannon Speaks is my handle. But I'd love to connect with you. I would love an opportunity to work with you or your organization, or, be able to share my knowledge and insights wherever I can, on whatever platforms you want to connect with me on. But it all starts at reagancannon.com, and you can find all the links to everything I mentioned there.
To my audience, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share, and sign up for our newsletter. It's free. Reagan, thanks so much for coming on the show. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.